Do you know why distance sometimes makes certain people more obsessed with you? When you finally stop chasing them, they suddenly chase you like a storm. If you want to understand this pull, listen carefully until the very end. Toxic people are not interested in your growth. They are interested in your usefulness. They study what you give. They ignore what you feel. For them, connection is a system of control, not a shared human bond. You were never just a person. You were a source of supply. Attention, validation, time, and emotional energy, this was their fuel. As long as you stayed small, confused, and dependent, their system worked perfectly. The moment you started growing, their quiet alarm system turned on inside their mind. They sensed a threat, not a threat to their safety, but to their control. Your growth means their grip is weakening, and this is something they cannot tolerate. People often interpret Machiavelli as saying, if control keeps order, then control will be protected. A toxic mind thinks in a similar way, very cold and very strategic. They do not ask, how are you changing? They ask, how is my influence changing? They run silent calculations. They measure how quickly you reply. They notice delayed answers. They register how often you say no. They feel insulted when you set limits. When you become calmer and more distant, they sense you are leaving their psychological cage. That cage was built from guilt, fear, doubt, and emotional confusion. You never saw the bars because they were inside your thinking, not outside your body. There is a strange rule inside dark psychology that almost nobody talks about. The more you outgrow a toxic connection, the more the manipulator feels intense panic. Not panic of losing love, panic of losing control. Your clarity is their danger, your detachment is their exposure. They feel the script changing, and they try to pull you back into the old script. They use old memories, old phrases, old emotional buttons, anything that once worked on you. They might suddenly become kind, generous, and very attentive, like a completely different person. You think they finally changed, but in reality, they simply changed tactics. The goal is still the same, keep you close enough to control your emotional temperature. Albert Bandura is often quoted with the idea that if behavior is rewarded, it repeats. Toxic people understand this instinctively, even if they never studied psychology. When you reacted strongly in the past, they saw your reactions as rewards. Your anger was a reward, your tears were a reward, your long explanations were a reward. Every emotional reaction told them, I still live inside your mind, I still have power. So they trained you with patterns, silent reinforcement, and unpredictable treatment. Sometimes they gave affection, sometimes they gave cold silence, sometimes they gave sudden criticism. Your nervous system stayed confused, and confusion kept you attached. Because your mind kept searching for stability, you stayed loyal to the same unstable source. Now something changed inside you, and they do not like it. You answer slowly, you speak less, you explain less, you justify almost nothing. You are learning that silence can be protection, not weakness. You are discovering that walking away inside your mind comes before walking away in reality. Their control panel shows warning signs because their old buttons are no longer working. They feel this loss of influence like a personal insult. To a toxic person, your independence is not growth, it is betrayal. They tell themselves, you are ungrateful, you forgot everything, you became arrogant. They build a story where they are the victim, and you are the villain. This story justifies their next move, chase you even harder, pull you even closer. You may ask, if they dislike you so much, why do they refuse to let go? The answer is uncomfortable. They do not want you, they want the version of you they controlled. They want your confusion, your self-doubt, your emotional hunger, not your clear mind. They want the version of you who accepted blame for everything to keep the peace. They want the person who feared their silence instead of enjoying their absence. When you grow, that older version of you starts to die. For you, this is healing. For them, this is a serious psychological loss. They fight to resurrect that old version by triggering your old wounds. They poke the same scars, waiting for the same reactions that once gave them power. Here is the real twist. Your outgrowing does not only threaten their control, it threatens their identity. If you rise above their games, then the game itself is exposed as empty. This means their past victories were not strength, they were simply your confusion. Their ego cannot accept this, so they push harder to rewrite the story. They want proof that you are still weak, still available, still emotionally reachable. Their mind whispers, if I can still make you react, I still matter. So they message more, they appear more, they create drama to pull your focus back. And every time you engage, they collect silent evidence that you never really left. Inside this pattern hides another secret, one that explains their sudden intense interest. When they feel you slipping away, they also feel their own emptiness more clearly. Your distance becomes a mirror. It shows them everything they refuse to face. Instead of healing that emptiness, they try to silence it by pulling you back in. They use questions, compliments, apologies, and sudden concern to reopen your emotional door. Each response you give pours more energy into the same empty space inside them. They mistake that borrowed energy for real strength, so they chase even harder. The more you feed this space, the hungrier it becomes over time. This is why their attention feels intense, but never truly stable or safe. You are not being valued, you are being harvested emotionally again and again. The dangerous question is this: when they chase you harder, will you finally recognize the trap? Or will you again confuse their renewed attention with genuine care and real change? Do you know why your silence suddenly becomes the loudest threat to them? When you stop reacting, their entire strategy begins to collapse. If you want to understand why distance makes them restless, listen carefully. Toxic people study patterns the way a strategist studies weakness. They observe your tone, your reactions, your hesitations, your doubts. Every time you revealed a fear, they stored it like private ammunition. Every time you explained yourself too much, they marked it as vulnerability. Every time you tolerated disrespect, they labeled you as predictable. Your emotional transparency was their advantage, because clarity gives power. Now your silence removes that clarity, and they cannot read you anymore. They feel blind, and blind manipulators become extremely aggressive. Machiavelli once said, "If uncertainty grows, control must rise." A toxic person follows this principle without even knowing its source. They sense your inner shift long before you say anything aloud. They notice your reduced tolerance for their criticism, even in small moments. They notice your emotional detachment, even when you speak politely. They notice the absence of fear in your voice, even without confrontation. To them, this is not normal change, this is rebellion. Rebellion must be crushed before it destroys their psychological throne. Here is a hidden truth very few people understand. A manipulator does not panic when you argue, they panic when you detach. Anger means you are still emotionally invested. Defensiveness means you still need them to understand you. Explaining means you still feel responsible for their comfort. Detachment means their influence is dying, and this terrifies them. You stopped reacting, so they start performing. They change their tone, they soften their behavior, they talk with sudden respect. They try to convince you that everything is fine, but their eyes stay watchful. Their mind studies whether your silence is real or temporary. They wonder if you found new strength, or if you are only pretending. They fear you discovered the pattern they hoped you would never see. That pattern is simple but terrifying once understood. They drain you slowly until you forget who you were before them. They shape your emotions until you react according to their script. They reduce your confidence so you become easy to predict. And then they reward you with temporary attention so you stay attached. This cycle only works when you are emotionally open. Your silence breaks the cycle, and they cannot tolerate that fracture. Albert Bandura once said, "If behavior loses reinforcement, it fades." Your silence removes the reinforcement that kept their tactics alive. You do not argue, so their provocations fall flat. You do not justify, so their accusations lose power. You do not chase, so their distance loses purpose. Your psychological distance dismantles their emotional architecture. They feel threatened because they cannot use old methods anymore. This is when they upgrade their manipulation strategy. They may shift to flattery, pretending you are suddenly important. They may shift to guilt, blaming your silence for their discomfort. They may shift to fear, creating emotional chaos to pull your attention back. They may shift to logic, pretending they only want clarity and peace. Every tactic is designed to reopen the emotional door you quietly closed. You may feel confused by this sudden change in their behavior. You may think they are finally becoming genuine. But there is a simple test that reveals their true intention. When your silence ends, their old behavior returns. When you give them emotional access again, their disrespect reappears. When you drop your guard, their criticism increases. This shows their change was not transformation, it was strategy. There is another hidden rule manipulators follow unconsciously. They believe whoever controls the emotional tempo controls the entire connection. When you withdraw your emotional rhythm, they lose their leadership role. They try to regain it by pushing, pulling, comforting, or provoking. Their goal is not harmony. Their goal is dominance disguised as concern. You never noticed how deeply they monitored your reactions. They noticed when you replied in 2 minutes instead of 1 minute. They noticed when you wrote fewer words than usual. They noticed when your tone became colder, even by a small degree. They noticed when you stopped over-explaining your intentions. To them, these are not small details. These are signs of psychological escape. A manipulator senses emotional withdrawal the way a predator senses movement. They react by intensifying their presence. They may message more than before, pretending to care. They may appear more supportive, pretending to understand. They may ask deep questions, pretending to be more emotionally aware. They may act vulnerable, pretending they suddenly trust you. Each move is calculated, not accidental. The goal is to force you into emotional responsibility again. Toxic people do not fear losing you. They fear losing their control over you. Your growth threatens their built image of themselves. They depended on your confusion to feel powerful. They depended on your self-doubt to feel superior. They depended on your emotional availability to feel relevant. Your transformation removes these psychological crutches. When you outgrow them, you force them to face their own emptiness. Your silence is a mirror, and they hate what it reflects. It shows them their lack of depth, because depth cannot survive manipulation. It shows them their lack of responsibility, because blame was always their shield. It shows them their lack of emotional maturity, because maturity does not fear equality. Your growth humiliates their ego, even if you said nothing directly. The most unsettling part is this: they will act like they are losing you emotionally. But secretly, they are losing their position of superiority. This is the real reason they chase harder when you outgrow them. Their ego cannot handle being replaced by your new clarity. Their identity collapses the moment you no longer respond to old triggers. Their entire psychological system depends on your emotional participation. Once you stop participating, their system begins to rot from the inside. They tell themselves a story to avoid facing this truth. A story where you became cold, ungrateful, distant, selfish, or changed. They create this story to protect their ego from realizing the real reason. You did not change suddenly, you simply understood them clearly. And clear understanding is something toxic people fear more than exposure. The real question now becomes something much darker. If they cannot control you anymore, what new tactic will they use next to regain influence? Do you know why your emotional clarity makes them feel completely powerless? When you stop being confused, they lose the map they used to navigate you. If you truly want to understand their next move, pay very close attention. Toxic people survive on one silent rule: confusion equals control. As long as you stayed uncertain, they stayed confident. As long as you kept doubting yourself, they kept shaping your reality. Your self-questioning was their authority. Your overthinking was their advantage. But when confusion dies, manipulation dies with it. Your new clarity exposes every psychological trick they once used to guide your reactions. This shift is not small. This shift destroys the entire system they depended on. The moment you understand patterns, you stop obeying them automatically. The moment you understand triggers, you stop reacting emotionally. The moment you understand their motives, you stop feeling guilty. A toxic person feels this internal change like a sudden earthquake. Their familiar methods do not work anymore, so they panic quietly. Machiavelli once said, "If old tactics fail, new tactics must begin." A manipulator follows this instinct like a hidden doctrine. They cannot tolerate losing control, so they choose a new strategy, psychological pressure. They test your boundaries in subtle ways to see if you really changed. They say small, provoking comments to measure your emotional temperature. They pretend to misunderstand you to see if you still over-explain. They offer affection to see if you still soften quickly. This is not connection, this is data collection. They study every shift in your behavior to rebuild a strategy around your weaknesses. But something confuses them deeply now. You are no longer predictable. Your responses no longer match the emotional script they designed long ago. You answer with fewer words, or sometimes not at all. You stay calm even when they try to provoke you. You do not collapse when they become silent. You do not chase when they become distant. Your nervous system is slowly breaking the cycle they created. This terrifies them not because they value you, but because they cannot control you. They feel threatened by your internal stability. They feel exposed by your new awareness. They feel inferior when you are no longer emotionally available. Losing control feels like losing identity, because manipulation is their comfort zone. There is another hidden truth dark psychology reveals. A manipulator does not fear your strength, they fear your independence. Strength can still be manipulated if tied to emotional need. Independence cannot be manipulated because it does not rely on external validation. You are becoming independent in ways they cannot reverse. You no longer respond to guilt the way you once did. You no longer collapse under emotional pressure. Your self-worth is no longer tied to their approval. You stopped seeking closure from someone who created confusion deliberately. Albert Bandura once suggested, if someone loses control of your behavior, they lose control of the outcome. Your new behavior breaks every outcome they desired. If you do not react to provocation, they cannot create conflict. If you do not justify yourself, they cannot shift blame. If you do not chase answers, they cannot reward or punish you with attention. Your emotional balance is dismantling their entire psychological framework. Their mind becomes restless because the familiar cycle is gone. They cannot pull you closer through fear, so they try kindness. They cannot pull you closer through guilt, so they try flattery. They cannot pull you closer through chaos, so they try vulnerability. They cannot pull you closer through silence, so they try urgency. Every move is strategic, not sincere. They are searching for a new button to press, a new weakness to exploit. Your growth confuses them for another reason too. It reminds them of something they avoid at all costs, self-reflection. They do not want to face their behavior honestly. They do not want to accept responsibility. They do not want to acknowledge the harm they caused. Your growth threatens their denial, so they fight it aggressively. They may even rewrite the entire past to paint themselves as innocent. They will twist your growth into a story of betrayal. They will pretend you changed suddenly, without reason. This protects their ego from seeing the truth. They pushed you away psychologically. You never noticed how deeply they depended on your emotional softness. Your empathy made their manipulation easier. Your loyalty made their control smoother. Your patience made their delays more powerful. Your forgiveness made their cruelty cheaper. The moment you change these patterns, they lose all psychological tools. Now they try a very dangerous tactic that many victims fall for. They present themselves as changed, enlightened, or suddenly understanding. They may talk calmly, express regret, or show unusual emotional depth. They pretend to be wounded by your distance, hoping to pull you back emotionally. But when clarity returns, their mask drops again. It always drops because change built on fear, not insight, never lasts. The real problem is simple. Your transformation threatens their narrative. They want to believe they were the stronger one. They want to believe they were the wise one. They want to believe they were the one in control. Your silence destroys that illusion completely. Your calmness humiliates their ego. Your emotional stability exposes their dependency. You outgrowing them shows they were never as powerful as they pretended. This brings us to an unsettling psychological twist. When manipulators realize they cannot control your mind anymore, they search for one last method to regain influence. The question now is this: what final tactic will they use when all other tactics fail to trap you again? Do you know why their behavior becomes strangely unpredictable when nothing seems to affect you anymore? When your mind stops responding, their manipulation loses its anchor. If you want to understand their final layer of tactics, keep listening carefully. Toxic people rely on psychological leverage. Leverage only exists when your emotions are accessible. But your new clarity blocks emotional access, and this forces them into instability. They switch rapidly between calm words and hidden irritation. They show interest one moment and coldness the next moment. They offer comfort, then suddenly create conflict. They are searching for a pattern that still works, but every pattern fails. Their unpredictability is not confusion, it is strategy. They believe unpredictability will destabilize your emotional balance. They hope your internal calm will break under pressure. They expect uncertainty to revive your old fears. They want you to return to your previous emotional shape. Because once you return, their control returns with you. Machiavelli once said, "If you cannot defeat someone with force, defeat them with uncertainty." A manipulator follows this rule instinctively. They understand that chaos makes you vulnerable. Chaos forces you to seek emotional stability. And they want you to seek that stability from them. This would restore their original position of influence. So they create micro-storms around you. They ask confusing questions that have no clear purpose. They change their tone without explanation. They give mixed signals and then act innocent. They withdraw suddenly, then reappear as if nothing happened. Each unpredictable move is designed to make you doubt your new strength. But something else troubles them now. You do not react the way you once did. Your mind no longer spins into panic. Your emotional center no longer collapses. You do not beg for clarity because you no longer depend on their stability. Your calmness turns their chaos into a silent failure. This is where their frustration quietly rises. Toxic people are most dangerous when they feel powerless. In their mind, losing control feels like losing identity. So they search for a deeper, older tactic, one that often works on unaware minds: psychological regression. Regression means pulling you back into the emotional version of yourself that they once controlled. They recreate situations that once triggered you. They repeat phrases that once silenced you. They mimic tones that once intimidated you. They reference memories that once made you feel guilty. This is not nostalgia. This is manipulation disguised as familiarity. Albert Bandura often explored the idea that if old patterns are activated, old responses may return. Manipulators understand this without formal knowledge. They activate past emotional patterns, hoping your mind will follow the same pathways. They rely on the psychological truth that memory influences behavior. They hope your body will remember old fears faster than your mind remembers new boundaries. But you are different now. Your awareness has reshaped the meaning of those memories. You do not fall for the same emotional stories. You do not shrink under the same emotional pressure. The triggers that once controlled you have lost their power. This makes them desperate, because desperation is the final stage of lost influence. They may suddenly act overly supportive, pretending they finally understand you. They may act deeply hurt, hoping guilt will reopen your emotional doors. They may act distant, hoping fear of abandonment will pull you closer. They may act superior, hoping authority will make you doubt yourself again. Every version of their behavior is a calculated attempt to find one working button. Their goal is not connection, their goal is reactivation. Reactivate your confusion, your emotional dependence, your self-doubt, your need for them. but your silence blocks reactivation. Your clarity blocks manipulation. Your boundaries block psychological access. Their final unpredictable phase hides another dark truth. They are not fighting you, they are fighting their fading power. They are not chasing you, they are chasing the version of you they once controlled. They are not angry at your distance, they are angry at their own weakness. And now something even more intense begins inside their mind. They realize they cannot influence your emotional rhythm anymore. Your identity no longer bends around their reactions. Your mood no longer depends on their approval. Your thoughts no longer revolve around their presence. Your psychological independence becomes a spotlight shining directly on their manipulation. And manipulators cannot survive in the light. Their hidden system collapses when visibility increases. Your growth exposes the emptiness behind their control. So now they must choose a final path, the most extreme tactic they use when nothing else works. The question is, when everything fails, what ultimate strategy will they unleash to pull you back into their psychological orbit? Do you know why their desperation turns into a strange psychological intensity when nothing breaks your calm? When every tactic fails, they activate the one strategy they kept hidden. If you want to understand this final shift, listen with complete focus. Toxic people rely on control, but when control dies, only obsession remains. This obsession is not love, it is fear of losing their psychological anchor. Your growth forces them to face a truth they avoided for years. They were never powerful, you were simply unaware. That awareness threatens their entire ego structure. So they turn to their most extreme hidden tactic, identity disruption. Identity disruption means attacking the foundation of who you believe you are. They cannot control your emotions now, so they try to control your perception. They challenge your beliefs in subtle ways to destabilize your confidence. They question your intentions, making you doubt your clarity. They twist your words, making you doubt your accuracy. They distort your past behavior, making you doubt your memory. They hint that your growth is arrogance, selfishness, or coldness. This is not criticism, this is an attack on your psychological grounding. Machiavelli once said, "If you cannot break the body, break the certainty." A manipulator follows this principle instinctively. They attack certainty because certainty protects you. They hope you will begin questioning your own mind again. They want to reopen your old insecurities because insecurities were their access point. If you begin doubting yourself, they regain leverage. This identity disruption can appear in many forms. They may act like they know you better than you know yourself. They may analyze your behavior as if they have deep insight. They may claim your growth is actually fear, denial, or running away. They may pretend they see something in your personality that you cannot see. Each statement is designed to plant psychological splinters inside your self-image. They also try something more subtle, emotional reframing. Emotional reframing means altering the meaning of your feelings. If you feel calm, they call it indifference. If you feel confident, they call it ego. If you feel independent, they call it avoidance. If you feel aware, they call it overthinking. They try to corrupt your inner signals, so you no longer trust your emotional compass. Albert Bandura once suggested that if someone controls your interpretation of events, they control your reactions to those events. This is the exact principle toxic people rely on now. They cannot control your reactions directly, so they try to control the meaning behind your reactions. If they succeed, they regain influence. If they fail, their entire strategy collapses. But you are not who you used to be. Your clarity blocks their reframing. Your awareness protects your identity. Your emotional intelligence shields your perception. You no longer absorb their definitions of you. You define yourself without their approval. This creates a psychological rupture inside them. They cannot enter your mind, and they cannot shape your perception. Their old power sources are gone, and the new ones are failing. They feel exposed, irrelevant, and small. Your independence becomes their humiliation. So they escalate further, reaching for a tactic that shocks even themselves, empathy inversion. Empathy inversion means pretending to be deeply wounded or broken. They act vulnerable at an extreme level. They express pain they never expressed before. They show emotional softness they never showed before. They act helpless in ways that pull at your compassion. This is a manipulation designed specifically for people with a gentle heart. They know your empathy is your strongest trait. They hope your compassion will override your clarity. They hope guilt will overpower your boundaries. They hope responsibility will pull you back into their orbit. Empathy inversion is powerful because it bypasses logic and goes straight to emotion. But there is another layer here, something darker and rarely understood. When they fake vulnerability, they are actually testing your emotional availability. If you respond quickly, they know you are still reachable. If you show sympathy, they know your heart is still open. If you comfort them, they know your boundaries can still be softened. Your response becomes data for their next strategy. But if you remain calm and grounded, something unexpected happens. Their vulnerability collapses because it was never real. Their emotional display stops instantly, exposing the performance beneath it. They shift from fragile to defensive, from gentle to irritated, from wounded to cold. This emotional whiplash reveals the truth. Their vulnerability was strategic, not genuine. Now they face the most painful realization of all. You are no longer controlled by guilt. You are no longer weakened by emotional manipulation. You are no longer shaped by their narrative. You are becoming psychologically unreachable. This forces them into a final inner crisis. They must decide whether to keep chasing someone they cannot control, or to retreat and protect their ego from further damage. But manipulators rarely disappear without attempting one last psychological twist. The question now is, when they realize you are fully out of reach, what is the final move they make to reclaim the illusion of power? Do you know why their mind suddenly becomes cold and calculated when they finally accept you escaped their influence? When your emotional distance becomes permanent, their psychology enters its final phase. If you want to understand their last and most dangerous move, listen very carefully. Toxic people cannot tolerate a story where they lost. Loss destroys the illusion of superiority they built inside their mind. So when they realize you are truly beyond their reach, they activate their final tactic, narrative reversal. Narrative reversal means rewriting the entire truth so they appear powerful again. If they cannot control you directly, they will control the story around you. This gives them the illusion of dominance, even when they have none in reality. Their mind works like a hidden strategy board now. They ask themselves one question: how can I regain authority without admitting defeat? The answer becomes their final psychological weapon: reputation manipulation. Reputation manipulation does not always involve public action. In many cases, it begins privately inside their own mind. They rewrite the past so they were the strong one, and you were the unstable one. They tell themselves they walked away first, even when they chased you until the end. They convince themselves you were too dramatic, too sensitive, too complicated. They transform your boundaries into flaws, because flaws justify their loss. They reshape you into an image that makes their ego feel safe again. Machiavelli once wrote, "If you cannot win through truth, win through perception." A manipulator follows this rule instinctively. Perception becomes their shield, their comfort, their new form of psychological control. They may not have access to your mind anymore, but perception gives them the illusion of victory. But something more subtle happens too, something darker. They begin practicing selective memory. Selective memory means remembering only the moments that protect their ego. They remember your silence as disrespect. They remember your boundaries as aggression. They remember your independence as betrayal. They forget their manipulation, their pressure, their guilt, their chaos. Selective memory helps them avoid facing their true behavior. Albert Bandura once suggested that people avoid responsibility when blame protects the self-image. A toxic mind uses blame as a full psychological armor. They cannot face the truth that their tactics failed, so they shift blame in every direction except inward. they also create another narrative, emotional dismissal. Emotional dismissal means pretending they never cared. They may act cold, distant, or superior. They may pretend the connection never mattered. They may behave as if you were always replaceable. Their coldness is not strength, it is emotional anesthesia. They numb themselves to avoid the pain of losing control. But here is the hidden truth. The more they pretend not to care, the more they are actually reacting. Indifference that is performed is still a reaction. Silence used as punishment is still attention. Detachment used as manipulation is still emotional investment. Their behavior reveals what their ego tries to hide. They lost the power they believed they owned. And deeper inside, something else begins to happen. A manipulator often follows a silent pattern after losing control: replacement projection. Replacement projection means they search for someone new who reacts the way you used to. Someone who explains too much. Someone who doubts themselves easily. Someone who reacts emotionally to small triggers. Someone who can be shaped the way you once were. This is not connection, this is psychological recycling. They are trying to recreate the old cycle with a new person because the cycle defines their identity. But even this replacement does not erase the truth. Their mind knows you became someone beyond their reach. Your clarity stands as a reminder of everything they could not break. The real twist is this: you were never the weak one. You were simply unaware of the silent rules governing your reactions. Once those rules became visible, their influence dissolved. Your awareness destroyed their entire psychological system. Your independence exposed their inner emptiness. Your emotional stability revealed their lack of depth. Your boundaries revealed their lack of maturity. Your growth revealed their lack of accountability. And now something powerful happens inside you. You no longer feel anger. You no longer feel fear. You no longer feel guilt. You no longer feel responsible for their emotions. You no longer feel tied to their approval. You step out of the psychological frame they spent so long building. Your mind becomes your own again. Your reactions belong to you. Your narrative belongs to you. Your identity belongs to you. Your emotional world is no longer shaped by someone who feared your freedom. The hidden manual of dark psychology ends with a truth many people never discover. You break the cycle not by fighting the manipulator, but by no longer being the version of yourself they targeted. The moment you outgrow the identity they controlled, their power dissolves completely. So the final question now becomes this: if someone can lose all control the moment you reclaim your mind, what does this reveal about who held the real power all along?